Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Minami. I'm a member of the Transform Fresno Outreach and Oversight Committee. Thank you for joining us for our Redlining Chinatown Rising session. Fresno's Chinatown is one of the oldest areas of Fresno, and while it was born of segregation, this downtown neighborhood represents the heritage of Fresno's rich cultural and ethnic diversity. I'm also your first presenter for this session. I'm the Executive Director of the Chinatown Fresno Foundation. We're fortunate to have 4 people here who will share their living history with you a little while later. So welcome to Chinatown Fresno, a mixed-use neighborhood on the west side of downtown Fresno, a part of Southwest Fresno as well. While the neighborhood has suffered decades of oppression and disinvestment, there is a glimmer of hope, Chinatown Rising. This is Fresno's residential security map, more commonly called a redline map. It was created by the Homeowners Loan Corporation in 1936. On this map, the green areas are considered the best, followed by blue, then yellow, and lastly, pink. White areas are industrial and commercial. We'll talk about the impact of this map on Chinatown and Fresno shortly. Now let's see what got Chinatown here.
Our district has seen a tremendous, continuous disinvestment from governments at all levels. So there's a real need to support the businesses in Chinatown and help them market to the larger communities.
The younger generation in Fresno, some of them don't even know there's a Chinatown in Fresno. So just a loss of customers it's been tough, but finding new ones is a challenge, but it's achievable.
Anything for a business owner or someone seeking a job, we will try to provide the resources here in Chinatown for them to take advantage of.
You know, we have community meetings that everyone gets to voice their concerns about security, safety, about walkability, connectivity.
We gather the people who are interested in Chinatown on topics that are of interest to everybody.
And we're here to try to improve business in Chinatown, trying to get some of these vacant buildings to become useful again and to get rid of some of the blight that's here in Fresno, Chinatown.
Most of the people in Fresno are connected in some way to the 11 cultures that grew in Chinatown.
Yeah, Central Fish has been in my family since 1950. My uncle, Akira Yokomi, they have a school, Yokomi Elementary, named after him. Unfortunately, there's not too many Chinese in Chinatown anymore. There's a big Japanese influence still in the buildings and the architecture. We have a heavy Mexican population here.
That's why we support promoting the cultural connections so strongly.
Chinatown was born through segregation. We were kind of forced to be in this part of town, and there's a lot of history that is being lost every day.
It's an area of Fresno that hasn't been treated fairly. That's starting to change. The Streets Project, water permeable alley facings, and there'll be pedestrian lighting.
And people would like to invest in Chinatown because they believe and they have hope, and you know, we're trying to foster that.
When Fresno located along a new railroad line at Fresno Station in the 1860s, many of the original settlers were Chinese, expert brick builders who began building a city. Soon, however, they were hustled off to live on the west side of the tracks where a vibrant live-work-play environment developed. East of the tracks was different. It was a place with a firm hierarchy of political and social power. A select group of white men controlled City Hall, business, and police. The wives of the men controlled home and church. But these men were familiar with the Chinatown Underground, a maze built to avoid the searing heat, but also to house brothels, opium dens, and gambling parlors. In 1873, Sam Wing Chi was a wealthy merchant in Chinatown running a general store, a 2-story opera house, and a joss house, which is a type of Chinese temple in which the altar and idols cost over $4,000. This is in 1873. His agribusiness investments ranged as far south as Hanford and Lemoore. This was his family store. He had a family with him, which was rare in Chinatown, while the majority of the Chinatown population, primarily men, were single and worked the fields. Since he was powerful within the community and a significant landowner, the impact of a decision by the Anglo townsmen of Fresno Station that year had a lesser impact on him. People of color had already been relegated west of the railroad tracks, but some bold encroachments threatened the ruling class. The town council held a meeting where they agreed not to sell, rent, or lease any land east of the railroad tracks to Chinese. Central Pacific Railroad, which owned most of the land in this area, agreed to cooperate. They sold only those lands west of the tracks to Chinese. The Fresno Republic, in its first edition in 1876, wrote an editorial called The Chinese Question, where they warned, "The constant influx of Mongolians is the greatest drawback to the prosperity of the country." In 1884, Fresno became a city, but the racism was already entrenched. Federal law codified it. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 restricted immigration of Chinese laborers and prohibited naturalization. The Geary Act of 1892 extended the Exclusion Act and placed the burden of proving their right to be in the United States upon the Chinese immigrants, also ensuring that wives of Chinese laborers would be forbidden entrance. In the 1890s, Fresno was described as, quote, "a bustling commercial corridor surrounded by agricultural lands whose enormous potential was just beginning to be realized." However, it was notorious for its saloons, brothels, and gambling operations, all run wide open without any gestures of control by town authorities. Chinatown was the center of this red light district. Fresno had the most unbalanced gender ratio of any city in California at this time, with men outnumbering women, especially in Chinatown, as shown here in the photo of laborers in China Alley. Also in 1884, Fresno flooded, covered in water like this view from Kern east of G Street. Racially segregated residential enclaves were common in California in the 19th century. Chinatown was established here in 1872. Most of the cultural and ethnic communities got their start here. By the 1880s, more than 1/3 of Fresno residents were building their homes and businesses on the other side of the tracks. As immigrants and those seeking better conditions from throughout the United States came to Fresno, they built their homes in the Chinatown area. There are 11 documented groups of people here. They include people originally from Africa, Armenia, China, Greece, Japan, Italy, Mexico, the Philippines, and Portugal, as well as Basque people from northern Spain and southern France, and Volgo-Russians from Germany. Each brings a history and a culture that has contributed to the vibrancy of Chinatown over the years. By the turn of the century, the Chinese population had dwindled. An influx of Japanese merchants produced changes to the Asian community in Chinatown. They built strong buildings and brought their families to Chinatown. Hideki Iwata built both buildings shown on the left. In 1912, the top one cost $24,500 and included his opera house to feature kabuki theater and movies. This building is now called Nippon 2. The bottom one, originally called the Iwata Building and now known as Nippon 1, was also located on the corner of Kern and F Streets. Mr. Iwata was deported in 1917 for being king of prostitution in Chinatown. In 1915, the top building held a cash market, a barber college, an opera house, a drugstore, a shoe repair shop, a tailor, and a dry goods store. The second photo shows another drug company, a restaurant and coffee shop, a liquor store specializing in sake, a manju shop, actually the first location of our current Kogetsudo, a sushi shop, and a billiards hall. The Kawakami Hotel in the middle of the slide is the current Komodo's. The Japanese Buddhist temple on the right was built in 1910. It remained that until recently purchased to serve as a Burmese Buddhist monastery. The photo in the upper right is Bill Bixby. He lived near Chinatown and was the first African American to graduate from Fresno High School. His story and those of many others local African-American pioneers can be seen at our cultural gallery by appointment or viewed virtually on our website. Chinatown continued to be vibrant with a strong Japanese influence, especially along Kern Street. There were 59 Japanese-owned businesses in Chinatown in 1940. Baseball was a common pastime. Shown here is Babe Ruth, who came to town with Lou Gehrig in 1927. The top picture is Kogetsudo, after it moved around the corner to its current location on F Street in 1920. The business and property are still owned and operated by the Ikeda family. The diversity of Chinatown's many cultures contributes significantly to the current Fresno region. While most are still struggling for economic justice and social justice, they continue to make Fresno culturally rich with potential for being inclusive. That diversity can be seen in this elementary school picture from the 30s. California State Commission, there we go. A California State Commission report titled Fresno's Immigration Problem said that nearly all of the Fresno's foreign-born lived in the, quote, foreign quarter on the west side. Fresno's first general plan codified residential segregation by reserving the southern quadrants of the city for polluting, foul-smelling industrial businesses and affordable housing. We are still dealing with the aftermath of Fresno's poorest and most vulnerable residents being consigned to the same neighborhoods as the city's dirtiest factories. There is a zone change battle going on right now to limit this impact. Redlining was used by the U.S. government to segregate African Americans from white suburbs. The Federal Housing Authority made decisions based on no evidence, fearing lowered loan valuations. In fact, when African Americans tried to buy homes in white neighborhoods, property values rose because African Americans were willing to pay more for properties than whites were, simply because their housing supply was so restricted and they had so many fewer choices. It was no different in Fresno. This portion of the redlining map shows Chinatown in the light green. You can see it was surrounded by residential property deemed to be too risky to insure. This assessment came about because, as the map creator, a man named Helming, said, Fresno's west side was labeled undesirable, the, quote, almost exclusive concentration of colored races, unquote. In more affluent neighborhoods, residence lots were sold under careful deed restrictions as to race. These practices set the stage for the systemic racism that exists today. A good reference on this topic is the book, The Color of Law by Richard Rostron. The Green Book was for travelers, although many African-American travelers just packed all their own food. Travelers to the valley found the places you see here, many of them in Chinatown. The 40s brought upheaval to Chinatown when Japanese Americans were incarcerated. Most of the Japanese-owned businesses no longer exist. The few that do were able to find a caretaker on very short notice. Baseball continued to be a pastime in Japanese internment camps, as shown here. A couple of notable authors who wrote about their lives in West Fresno were born in the 40s. Shirley Ann Williams was a novelist, poet, professor, vocalist, and social critic. Gary Soto is a poet who worked as a farm laborer, catching the labor bus in Chinatown. Chinatown labor buses served West Side farms in the early 1900s until 1960s. The 50s brought a change that would isolate Chinatown from its residential population, the state of the decline of this commercial neighborhood. The Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956 authorized 41,000 miles of highway construction, including California State Route 99. This created a physical barrier between the west side and the rest of Fresno, destroying more than 20 blocks of existing residential housing, Chinatown's residential neighborhoods. Chinatown continues to exist in the 60s and 70s, but at a reduced pace. However, many properties in the neighborhood were suffering. For reference, both these maps show Chinatown, one in the late 50s up here and one recently. Thanks to Dan Zach, Fresno's downtown guru, for giving us this comparison. The red line that is approximately horizontal is Kern Street. And then here you can see it's been cut off. The line that is slightly more vertical is G Street. The circle in both maps shows the temple. The California Community Redevelopment Act was created in 1945 to give local governments tools to address urban problems such as blight, degraded buildings, and a lack of affordable housing. The impact on Chinatown began around 1960, shortly after the photo on the left was taken. The flat ground you see is the result. Redevelopment agencies ceased operating in 2012. While redevelopment projects did provide affordable housing in some cases, that wasn't the case in Chinatown. The successor agency to Fresno's redevelopment agency still owns 5 parcels in Chinatown. They are all flat ground and are shown by the 3 small stars in the lower right portion of the map. This shows historically significant buildings that were demolished in 1965. These are the Kong Chau Temple, formerly at 939 G Street, and the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association at 941 G Street, both built in the 1880s. Elaborately carved altars and statues, embroidered tapestries, and other Chinese artifacts that had been housed in the building were moved to the Fresno Historical Society archives before the demolition. The example here in the left is one of the artifacts that was moved. If you know Chinatown, you probably know Central Fish, currently on the corner of Kern and G Streets. Akira Yakomi and his wife Nafuko opened Central Fish in 1950 on Kern Street. While there were other fish companies in Chinatown at the time, their venture proved to be successful. When they needed to expand, they were told to move north, the way Fresno was moving. But Mr. Yakomi's response was, "My customers are here." So they built their current building. The grand opening is seen here in the top left in 1979. These customers still remain loyal, as others have become regulars for the fish counter, the small market featuring Japanese specialties, and the restaurant. The Akira Yakomi Elementary School near downtown Fresno was named in his honor. The 1980s and 90s showed the resilience of many Chinatown businesses. They built their own customer bases, and their customers remained loyal. Barbershops prospered, restaurants stayed strong, but while they shared a neighborhood, their customers were their customers. Dick's Menswear was hanging in there since 1915 and actually lasted to 2015. But Aki Hardware next door finally closed in 1996. Komodo's filled some vacancies. Chef Paul's opened. People started talking about the tunnels, the underground tunnels. Chinatown had underground tunnels. Well, actually, there are no tunnels, but there are connected basements that stretch under many businesses. You can enter a basement on F Street and exit on China Alley. Soon we'll be able to bring back underground tours. We're certainly looking forward to it. Here's what Chinatown looks like now on the bottom 2 slides. Neighborhood commercial with businesses, second floors that are largely vacant. But let me introduce you to a few people. Felix, starting on the left, Felix, who's been fixing cars all his life. Gamaliel, who buys broken appliances, large ones like refrigerators and washers, repairs them, sells them, often a dozen a day. Rosie, owner of Rosie's Flower Shop, always gets rave reviews for her creations. Doug has been around several years making t-shirts to your specifications, including the one he's wearing saying "Answer," his company name. Did you notice that that is Fresno spelled backwards? And Ivan's a barber, owner of one of the 6 successful barbershops in Chinatown. In 2017, Chinatown people began meeting. At first, it was to assure that Chinatown had projects through Transformative Climate Communities, TCC. Well, we know what that is, right? That worked. We have a streets project through much of the neighborhood that we call CHAT. That stands for Chinatown Active Transportation. It will provide trees, maybe 350 trees are speculated, fix sidewalks, and install pedestrian lighting. We also have CHUG, Chinatown Urban Greening, which focuses on China Alley, installing design features and water permeable paving from Ventura to Fresno streets. Currently under construction is a Fresno Housing Authority project aptly called the Monarch at Chinatown, aptly because it's at the corner of F Street and Mariposa, Spanish for butterfly. 57 units will be built with retail on the ground floor. Such a great addition to Chinatown. Also TCC funded a feasibility study to see whether a PBID, a property-based business improvement district, is possible in Chinatown. It would offer us sustainability and give us the solid ground to build a better Chinatown. And that group of property and business owners that started the meeting in August 2017, they formed the Chinatown Fresno Foundation to shepherd the TCC projects, create a unified voice so Chinatown could be heard. There is also an ongoing task to get all of us through the massive construction on our streets that is high-speed rail. Don't get me wrong, we support high-speed rail. The future of Chinatown is bright. It's just a little tough going right now. These 18 blocks have been Chinatown since the 1950s when State Highway 99 came through. The points I'd like you to see are the detours so that you can still get to Chinatown. Kern Street here in the middle will be closed, is closed and will be closed forever. Tulare Street here and Ventura here are going to be underpasses like Fresno Street already is here on the other edge of Chinatown. So if you're coming west on Fresno Street here, you can turn into Chinatown. If you're coming west on Tulare, hang a left at H Street here and turn on right on Mono, and you can come into Chinatown. If you're coming west on Ventura, the detour will start probably in the next couple of months. So you will need to hang a right on 8th Street, again take Mono, and you can get into Chinatown or also back out to Ventura if you want to proceed to Southwest Fresno. Incorporated in January 2018, the Chinatown Fresno Foundation works to unite our community, honor our history, strengthen business and property assets, and build vibrancy in the neighborhood. That vibrancy comes from events which have been curtailed now, but we will get back to Chinatown Live, an event that celebrates our great food and includes tours of historic buildings. So look for that. And also our community picnics held at the fire station, free for anyone who cares about Chinatown. We're trying our hand at virtual community meetings, but we will be happy to get back to actual in-person community meetings at some point, like this one shown here, which was about extensive construction information, and also community meetings like this one shown with Councilmember Arias speaking, as well as the Central Valley Director of High Speed Rail, at that point, Diana Gomez, to give us updates. Chinatown has 19 pieces of public art in 18 square blocks. Don't you think that's worth a trip here? But we'll also, if you enter Chinatown from Ventura or the Ventura Detour, driving north on G Street, you'll see a full building mural, this one at the bottom left on your slide. In this vicinity, Central Fish has a mural, and the Dix building now has murals on both sides, including this beautiful koi on the F Street side. Inside of Chef Paul's, you find this mural in the top right, and there's just art on buildings around Chinatown. We're developing a mural walking tour, but for now, exploring on your own should give you quite an interesting vision. We want you to see our history as well, not just the beautiful murals, but the amazing architecture. The Buddhist temple, now called the Mrak Dhamma Center, is still impressive after over 110 years. The American Baptist Church, the brick building, still has a small congregation meeting on Sunday mornings. The Chinatown Galleria is creatively designed just for its own purposes, and the fire station, that's the practice tower where firefighters train for working in multi-story buildings. This black building actually is a mural. The entire building was designed to incorporate an elaborate paint job. A tour of at the Bing Kong Association building is on China Alley. It's an example of the Tong culture in early Chinatown. Tongs were essentially gangs operating the illicit activities that were not regulated at the turn of the century. A tour of the inside of the Bing Kong building includes the cashier's page for payments of services, including gambling, drugs, and prostitution. The second floor features a second kitchen, a dance floor, and a stage, and the cool, still solid balcony that you see here. If you come to Chinatown, you can take advantage of businesses that have been in existence for years, for decades. Whatever kind of services you're seeking, you can probably find it in Chinatown. We have the tastiest and most diverse food offerings of any neighborhood in Fresno. We have the only fresh tofu manufacturer in the valley, available for sale at Central Fish. We have kogetsudo for Japanese sweets that have been made the same way for over 100 years. We have salmon, house-made sushi, and lunch at Central Fish for the last 70 years. You can pick up freshly brewed and canned beer or have it delivered from Full Circle, operating for almost 35 years. Or you can get a hamburger from Tulare Bistro, open since the start of the pandemic just a year ago and still hanging in there. Does anyone have questions? Okay.
Jan, I do see a question through our Whova app right now, and I'll read it off to you.
Thank you.
Are there any vacant commercial properties available for purchase?
There are. We are familiar with a couple of them. There are also owners who may be interested in selling and who haven't listed, but definitely contact us. Is there anything else? Okay, let's move on. We have Chinatown people to talk about their personal histories in Chinatown. All four of these folks have strong roots in Chinatown, but also are currently operating businesses here. Is Ophelia here to start off? Chris?
I have not seen Ophelia join yet.
Okay. Arthur, are you there?
I am here.
Let's hear from Arthur then.
Yeah, so I am the CEO of Full Circle Brewing Company, located in Chinatown and F in Ventura. I did not originally found Full Circle Brewing. It was actually founded by Bill and Don about 20 years ago. We're actually in an old postal service building. It's a very nice, historically registered brick building. And it used to be a postal service station. So the postal trucks would go in the front. They would get service, oil change, and out the back for gas and get back on the route. So if you see our building at 620 F Street, you'll actually see the postal eagle at the top of the crest of the building, which is really cool. So some people think it's 100 years old, but it's actually was built in the 1950s. So after that, it became Blues Auto, and it was Blues Auto for several years, just auto repair shop. It's a large building, 8,500 square feet. And then the original Full Circle founders took it over in probably the late 90s, and they officially opened to the public on April 1st of 2000. So kind of an April Fool's joke. and they had a really good run. I ran into Full Circle when I moved to Fresno. I'm a transplant from the Bay Area. I'm originally a CPA by trade, worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers and in the big city, and just came down here to visit my sister-in-laws that went to Fresno State, just fell in love with the area, and always kind of, loving the outdoors, loving the boating scene here, but always looking for kind of that little bit of city feel. So of course, because in most cities you go downtown and that's where the good vibe is. So I went downtown and, there wasn't a lot going on at the time, but I did find in Chinatown, Full Circle, and they just had just this like kind of dive bar, like eclectic, like entertainment of people from all over town. It was like kind of like an artist like hop right there, and you could see anything. It was just crazy, and they had really good beer, and I just started to kind of fall in love with the spot, and was a home brewer at the time, and had always dreamed one day of opening a brewery. And one day Full Circle was up for sale, so I decided to sell the accounting practice and purchase Full Circle, and we've been growing ever since. We were very sure that because of our location in Chinatown on F and Ventura, that people wouldn't come out from the rest of the city. So we were already in our minds going to be a production facility, but that just wasn't the case. We started. We continued some hosted events that the original Full Circle ownership group had, and we just saw that if you build it or if you entertain, they will come. So entertainment has become a big part of our brand, and we just the community came out and just kept drinking us out of beer. So we've just been growing ever since, and trying to keep up with beer demands, not here locally, but also across the state of California and even beyond. Although we never thought that Chinatown would be a competitive advantage when it came to hosting events. We were wrong about that, and then we never thought about Chinatown being a competitive advantage in the state of California, but we were wrong about that, because Chinatown's located right off of the 99. We distribute beer, distribute beer all over California with their own truck. So whether you're going north and delivering beer in Sacramento, or going south to LA, Fresno, and specifically being just off the 99 in Chinatown is a great place to be. So I feel that our location there has been a big part of our growth. And just to put it in scale, like when we took over the Full Circle Brewing, we produced that first year about like 3,000 gallons of beer. And this year we're projected to do almost 200,000 barrels of beer. So there's a tremendous amount of growth over the years, and I think that's because of where we chose to be located.
Thanks, Arthur. Alex, I think will be here shortly. June, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Can you share about Golden Cuts and your Chinatown connections, please?
Yes. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is June Stanfield. I am the owner of Golden Cuts Barbershop and Salon located in Chinatown. I've been in business since 1999. It was the first place I went to as soon as I got out of barber college, and never regretted a moment. I grew up knowing Chinatown since I lived in Southwest Fresno, born and raised. That was a place that we visited when we were children, either going to Chinatown or to downtown. Yes, I've seen the decline, but that did not sway me to come to Chinatown, because I saw that Chinatown can be something in the future. That's one of the reasons why I was one of the founding board members for the Chinatown Fresno Foundation. I believe in Chinatown. I believe where it's going. I believe in its growth and what we can accomplish. I'm just happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to our community thriving and growing even more in the future. Thank you.
I want to say too that June was instrumental in getting the African American Heritage exhibit in our gallery. And that picture you see of her here is part of the exhibit. Again, that you can see that by making appointments with us, or we have a virtual tour on our website, chinatownfresno.org.
Yes.
Alex, are you there yet? Maybe not. Chris, do we have Ophelia?
Still don't see Ophelia or Alex.
Okay, did you send another, I'm sorry, but did you send another invitation to Alex? I just emailed both of you.
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right. Well, let me give you a little bit of Ophelia's history. She's been in Chinatown over 40 years with an assortment of businesses. She had Ophelia's Casina next door to her barbershop for a number of years, providing excellent Mexican food. It's now Esperanza's Cocina, and she also worked for a dozen years for Dick's Menswear. So she has connections into many businesses within the community. A brief summary of Alex is he owns property, an entire block on East Street. And it started out with his family's Panderia Vista Hermosa bakery business, and he also has a meat market, as well as owning and operating the property. Hold on just a sec. All right, Alex actually should be here shortly. He said he got the link.
Okay, great. While we're waiting, I see a question for Arthur. It's in the chat. Says, is Full Circle moving to Fulton Street? And if yes, are they still keeping their current location business in Chinatown?
You know, that's a good question. So, you know, if you come by Full Circle now post pandemic, you'll notice there's been a lot of changes. We've actually added tanks from end to end in that 8,700 square foot building. So we have no space to continue all of our big events that we like to do within our Chinatown location. So it will be a full production facility. So we will, our forward facing business, our tasting room will actually be on Fulton Street. So if that answers your question, but we'll still be doing tours in Chinatown, and it will still be our home office, our home base, where we do all of our business work and our beer production, as well as cider production.
Are you there, Alex?
Alex is still not here.
He said he got the link. Make sure he joins. Sorry to hold everybody up.
There we go. I see he is joining now.
Okay, Alex, let's hear your story. Alex?
Alex, you are muted currently.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah, Alex, let's hear your story.
You have any questions?
Tell us what you own and the businesses you operate and how long you've been doing this, how your mother started out, the whole story.
Well, my parents came to Fresno, probably, I was still in middle school when they went and dragged me to Fresno. And well, I guess I was kind of homeless when I first got to Fresno, because when I first came to Fresno, my parents were living off the bakery. And so back here to this day, we have a shower in the back. So I used to stay behind the meat cases, the bread cases. So until my dad got an apartment, I graduated from Bullard High in '95. And then I worked the bakery for about maybe since the age of 13 to 23 for 10 years. And then I opened up my own bakery in Orange Grove, which is still running to this day. So I've been over there in Orange Grove for about 18 years. And so my parents have always had businesses, mostly in the food industry, which is something I didn't want to get into, but now I am. And then so the opportunity came to buy this property first. And so we bought one of the parcels, which came with 4 buildings. And then a couple of years later, they sold me the rest. So now I own between Kern and Tulare. So right now I have about 10 tenants already. 10, yeah, about 10 tenants.
Are all your locations occupied, Alex?
Almost. I have one. I think I have 2. I think I still have 2 available.
Okay. It's sort of a people think that Chinatown is completely abandoned, but most of the buildings are mostly occupied. They're not necessarily occupied with what is normally in a ground floor storefront. They're used for storage sometimes and other things, but because the rental rates are reasonable, most Chinatown storefronts and businesses are rented.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the other thing about Chinatown. I think we are a bit when I first took on this project of the property, with the insurance costs being kind of high, but you have to have insurance.
Mhm.
So that's one of the things that you do have to have. I think my premium went up like almost $2,500 this year. So
Wow.
it's not cheap.
Okay.
What else?
Are there any other questions of any of us?
I do see that there is a question in the Q&A panel here. I'll read it to you. Are there any concerns around gentrification, and how do you all see preserving the history and people?
One of the things, of course, gentrification needs to be considered, and it generally has a bad name. What we are working very diligently to do is to make sure that the people who are in Chinatown now can stay in Chinatown. So businesses like June's and Alex's and Arthur's and Ophelia's can remain in Chinatown and be successful in Chinatown. So it is the type of business support services and the work that we do is primarily focused on assuring success for the people who are already in Chinatown. Of course, we welcome startup businesses and other entrepreneurs. It's a great place to have a business. But yes, we are well aware that it's possible for an area that grows like Chinatown to price the original people out of the market, and we are not going to let that happen.
Thank you, Jan. Also just want to mention, I put a link in the chat section to the Transform Fresno website where the displacement avoidance page sits. There's definitely a team that is working to keep that from happening, and lots going on with that, and you can be a part of it even still as things are changing moving forward. I see a second question here. Asks this question is for Alex, and it says, "What are the names of your businesses in Chinatown?" And Alex, you are muted currently.
I have one building that's the meat market. It was the old Chris meat market, which put in new floorings and stuff. So I'm probably gonna open that one up in a couple of weeks. And then next to that one is Panaderia Vista Hermosa, which is a Mexican pastry bread. And we do our main focus is Mexican breads with some like we have croissants, we have puff pastry, we have cakes. That's something I'm gonna push this year on the cakes. And let me see, what else do we do? We have quite a bit of, so we sell to like Robertitos, the Tortas, Don Pepe's, they buy our bolillos. We're well known for the bolillo. Some say we're number one. I don't know, but it is good.
They also have excellent cookies.
Oh yeah, we make. So I make some stuff in Orange Grove that we don't make here in Fresno. And I do more donuts over there than here. It's just, but Orange Grove is small. It's a real small town, about maybe almost 10,000 people compared to Fresno, which, we're a little bit over 500,000. So sometimes it's a struggle in Orange Grove because most of the workers over there are field workers. So my main business over there is in the mornings, but it's still sustaining me and my family. And so we moved to Reedley. So now the commute from Reedley to Orange Grove is only like 15 minutes. And then for here to Fresno, Chinatown, it's about 25. So it works out.
Thanks, Alex. Do you have any other questions, Chris?
It looks like that is going to be all the questions. Yes, somebody's asked if I can send the link again to the displacement avoidance, and I will.
Okay.
Certainly do that.
Is it possible to get our connection stuff in the chat too? It's right here. Chris?
Yeah, I can add. I type that out right quick. So ChinatownFresno.org.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On Facebook, and it's Chinatown Matters.
Right.
Instagram, Chinatown, Fresno. Do you want me to add your the phone and email address too? I can do that.
That would be great if you could. We're happy to give people tours or just talk about Chinatown. Thank you, Chris.
All right, absolutely.
Any other questions?
Actually, there is another question here, just added to. Let's see. Has there been discussion around recruiting additional grocery services or maybe a farmer's market?
We have a couple of staff, part-time staff people and a volunteer who are very eager to get at farmers market. We do have a small, let me see, I think there's a picture of it here. Here. Wait, where are we here? Okay, there we are. See where the purified water, there's also a small market next to that and near Ho Ho Cafe that is that has but small market services, not a larger market. I think they're we're looking to expand residential. You can see, let me go back here. Oh, well, you can see it here. Oh, touchy little. Anyway, the second stories of a lot of buildings used to be residential. They're called single room occupancy. And these SROs, there's been discussion also looking for possible funding to develop the residential potential of those second floors, whether they are still remain single room occupancy, like, well, the Dix building has occupants right now, as well as Chinatown Galleria in the second floor. But there's a possibility of turning some of those into apartments. So as the residential population grows, when the housing authority residential is completed, that would be the time to add market, expanded market capability, because I don't think people come right now to come for grocery store, but if there are residents who want to walk to the grocery store, that makes it a much more viable option. Thank you for your question. Anything else?
Looks like that is all of them.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you joining us today. And come visit Chinatown. Connect with us. We can help you find what you're looking for.